All right, so it's 7 o'clock on Monday, November 1st, 2021, and I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof for members of council? Okay, seeing none. I will note that Councillor Clark will not be joining us tonight. She had a conflict with another meeting, so that's where she is. And before we get into the minutes of the previous meeting, I just want to mention, it was Halloween last night, and I don't know how everybody else did out in the country in Adelaide Metcalfe, but we had 12 trick-or-treaters that came by our place. Did anybody have more than 12 people that showed up at their place for trick-or-treaters? I'm guessing Deputy Mayor Hendricks, she has a lot of grandkids.
Yeah, I think I had 12, unless I'm missing somebody. 3, 6, 10, 12. Yep, I had 12.
There we go. So we tied at 12. Excellent. And the other thing I want to note, this coming Sunday, I believe, that's November 7th, there's going to be the Remembrance Day service being held at 11 a.m. at the Cenotaph at the Kerwood Fire Hall. So just to note that is going on back again this year. So we'll get into the agenda here. So we have the minutes of the previous meeting, and that is from October 18th. Do we have a mover and seconder for approval of those minutes? Councillor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we're going to jump right into our first delegation. We already have Jen here from Graham Scott Ends, and you're going to go over those 2020 audited financial statements for us.
Yes, thank you very much. I did want to check whether you want me to share my screen or whether everyone has what they need, and I will just reference pages as I go.
So I think everybody has it, but to make it easier for us and anybody watching on YouTube, if we could either have you share your screen or somebody do that.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
I have my screen shared. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me this evening. So I am here to review the draft financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. I'm going to walk through the statements. I am going to highlight a few things, but of course, as always, if anyone has any questions, please let me know, and I'd be happy to address those at this time. I have been through these statements in detail with Johnny previously, so I am going to keep it more high level, but if you have a question, please jump in. After I walk through the draft statements, I'm going to touch on a few other required communications from the audit. Okay. So looking at these financial statements, the first page I'm going to pause on is called Management's Responsibility for Financial Reporting. This was new in the financial statements last year, and it really is just indicating that management is responsible for the preparation of the financial statements in accordance with the Canadian accounting standards for public sector entities. And it does get signed by the treasurer at the end of the audit. That doesn't change the amount of work we do or anything like that. It's just for clarity about whose information this is. Turning to the next page, we have the independent auditor's report, and I am going to pause and read the audit opinion. We have audited the financial statements of the Corporation of Township of Adelaide Metcalfe, which comprise the statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2020, and the statement of operations and accumulated surplus, statement of change in net financial assets, and statement of cash flows for the year then ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the municipality's financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2020, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended, in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for public sector entities. So that's a big, long way of saying it is a clean audit opinion, no material misstatements. Assuming council approves the financial statements, they will be dated with today's date, November 1st, 2021. So turning to the statement of financial position, also known as the balance sheet, this is a listing of assets and liabilities of the municipality as at a point in time, so as at December 31st, 2020. First balance I'll draw your attention to is cash. You'll notice a significant increase of about $2 million over the prior year. and that is the direct result of surplus from operations during the year. I will point out that I have recommended, and Johnny's aware of this, that council consider an investment policy to perhaps invest some of the excess cash in a prudent manner, rather than it sitting in a general operating account. The investment balance has increased about $10,000. That's just due to the reinvestment as interest is earned. Taxes receivable has had a decrease over the prior year, just due to good collections. The current amount is down over prior year, so less penalties and interest and slightly better collection. Accounts receivable looks very similar to prior year, but there's actually quite a few different things going on in that balance, and we'll see it a little better when we get to note 4. So total financial assets, $9,574,000. Financial liabilities. So the first item is accounts payable and accrued liabilities. You'll see there's a significant increase there. There's a few different balances that are resulting in that increase. One of the largest of which is about $281,000 due to the County of Middlesex relating to joint projects. There's also increase in security deposits, and then in general, trade accounts payable is higher than the prior year, just due to the projects that were in process and completed in Q4 at the end of 2020. Deferred revenue, there's an increase over a prior year, and again, I'll ask us to wait until we get to note 5 so we can see the breakdown a little bit better there. But deferred revenue is, of course, where we received money from things like grants, federal gas tax, and it comes into deferred revenue and then it moves to revenue once we spend it. So by seeing an increase there, we've received additional grant revenue that has not yet been spent. Net long-term liabilities has decreased just due to the continued repayment of the principal portion. And landfill closure and post-closure liability continues to creep up in accordance with the valuations that are done. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in note 8. So total financial liabilities, $1,979,000, leaving us with net financial assets, $7,594,000. For our non-financial assets, we have tangible capital assets, just a small change, but again, it's sort of a net effect. There's about $884,000 in additions, less $892,000 in amortization. Inventories and prepaid expenses, small balances and comparable to prior year. So total non-financial assets, $18,788,000. And once we add everything together, we have an accumulated surplus, $26,383,000. Is there any questions on the statement of financial position before I continue on?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Perfect. So statement of operations and accumulated surplus for the year ended December 31st, 2020. So the first thing I'm going to remind everyone of is that this budget column is a PSAB budget. So it's in accordance with accounting standards. So it's a little bit different than the budget originally passed by council. And you can see the conversion from the council budget to the PSAB budget in note 17. We then have the actual figures for both 2020 and 2019. Now, there's just a few things that I was going to point out here. So we have a significant increase in local improvement levies, both over the prior year and over budget, and that's where we record the drain revenue. So there has been a little bit falling behind on billing the drains, and some of that was started to be caught up in 2020 and continued to be caught up in 2021. But that's why we're seeing a large amount of revenue sitting under local improvement levies. Under government transfers, included within those amounts are some additional COVID funds that were received, and so they're within the provincial government transfers. In total, for total revenues, we have $6,755,000, so higher than both last year and budget. For expenses, there's just a few things I wanted to touch on here. General government is higher than both prior year and budget, just due to increases in consulting and legal fees, some salaries, and computer support. So those are all leading to the increase in expenses. Other protective services is higher than both budget and prior year. That's the result of RSM building consulting, so a contracted service. Transportation services is a little bit lower than budget, a little bit higher than prior year. It's just sort of a shift in the expenditures, a little bit less in salaries, a little bit more in supplies. Health services, I'm just going to point this out. It's a small number, but we did see a significant increase. It's just the result of some corrections and writing off some old accounts receivable that flow through that health services line. So that's a one-time thing. It's not expected to stay higher like that. Okay, and then the final thing I wanted to comment on was under planning and zoning. So that 283,000. So that's where the joint building inspection department has been recorded. So that's why we see a significant increase over prior year. So total expenditures, 5,504,000. So that leads us to our annual surplus of 1,250,743. Is there any questions at this time on the statement of operations?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. So statement of changes in net financial assets, really an accounting activity. We're just going between the annual surplus and the change in to calculate the change in net financial assets. Statement of cash flows is another accounting exercise. There's really nothing there that we haven't already talked about. We've talked about the acquisition of tangible capital assets, $884,000. Turning our attention to the notes to the financial statements. Note 1 is the summary of significant accounting policies. There have been no changes to the accounting policies of the municipality during the year. So now I'm going to turn to note 3, taxes receivable. And this is where I was just referencing when we were looking at the statement of financial position, the breakdown. So what we're seeing is significantly lower current taxes receivable. So good collections for 2020, and then comparable amounts for arrears, taxes receivable, and penalties and interest. Accounts receivable. So I was indicating that in total, the balance was rather comparable, but there are a few different things happening in here. HST receivable has decreased significantly in 2020 over 2019, getting caught up on those HST returns. There is the new debentures receivable sitting within accounts receivable. And then there's an amount due to other municipality or due from other municipalities and school boards. And part of that is relating to the joint building inspector program. So that leads our total accounts receivable, 616,000. Note 5 is deferred revenue. And again, I just wanted to point out what's within that that's changing. So the biggest change is the federal gas tax. So there was an additional amount received, about 90,000 in 2020 that has not yet been spent. So it sits there as a deferral until that time that it will be spent. Okay. Note 8, landfill closure and post-closure liability. The main thing I wanted to draw your attention to here, which should be of no surprise to council, is that the date the landfill is expected to reach capacity for the Metcalfe site was 2020. And I believe it has reached that in 2021 and is in the process of being closed. But I just wanted to draw your attention to this. We've had this note for many years, anticipating the day, and the day has come. So I wanted to draw your attention to that. Other than that, it's all the assumptions used in calculating the liability for closing the landfill and comparing that to the amount that's set aside in the reserve. So we're in good shape. Tangible capital assets. This is where we were talking a little bit about the additions and amortization. The next note I'll pause at is note 10, accumulated surplus. So here I just wanted to touch on a few different things, one of which is this benefiting landowners. So once again, this is basically representing drain work that's been completed. It doesn't go through the statement of financial position. It is captured here. And so you can see that there is a significant decrease. And so that relates to, in part, billing out drains, which is great. And in other part, there has been a write-off of some of the drain amounts due to the fact that it's been more than 5 years. And so at this point, they cannot be collected. So the amount that can be recovered or is estimated to be recovered benefiting landowners relating to drains, 733,000. In terms of the reserves, we have the details of all the reserve balances as at December 31st, 2020, itemized here. Contractual obligations. So I did want to draw your attention to this note as well. So this is indicating that municipality has an obligation for the purchase of tangible capital assets in the amount of approximately $355,000. So this is the fire truck. The asset purchase was approved in the 2020 budget and will be funded by the reserve. But in 2020, there was no payment made for the fire truck and it has not yet been received. So we've disclosed it as a contractual obligation, and it'll perhaps hit the books in 2021, assuming the truck is received before year end. Okay, note 12 is required disclosure relating to the owner's pension. Keep going. Note 15, contingent liabilities. This is our standard wording, just indicating that there could at any time be claims against the municipality, but it's not expected to be significant, and there are no claims that can be identified that should be recorded at this time. Note 16 is just a different way of looking at expenses. It's breaking them down between salaries, long-term debt, materials, contracted services. And then there's note 17, which is the budget. This is what I was referencing earlier. There's the approved budget as council has originally approved it. Then there are some adjustments made primarily for capital items. And then that becomes the PSAB budget that's presented on the statement of operations. Note 18 is our COVID note. It was here last year. It is here again this year. We'll see if it's there next year. But basically saying during and subsequent to year end, the municipality was exposed to economic risks associated with the coronavirus pandemic. This is appearing in all of our engagements. It does not indicate that there's a significant risk to the municipality. I would say that there's not, but we are disclosing that in all of our audited financial statements. Note 19 outlines the different segments that are reported on the final schedule of segment disclosure, which is just another way of breaking down the revenues and expenditures by segment. That was my high-level summary of the statements. Does anyone have any questions? I'd be happy to go back and answer anything at this time.
All right, is there any questions at all from members of council? Councilor McKenna, you want to ask any questions about the drains? You always like to ask the drain questions. I don't know if that's one you want to ask or not.
I've had it answered. Thank you, Mayor Curtis. I spoke to Johnny earlier today with some questions, and he had approached Jen in regards to a question I had. So I've received all the answers that I had to the questions.
Perfect.
Excellent. Happy to hear that.
Is there any questions at all from Councilor Brody or Deputy Mayor Hendricks? Doesn't look like it. All right. Thank you so much, Jen, for the presentation and all your hard work. And I hope you enjoyed working with Johnny this year in the Treasury Department to get everything done. I think this is this report and statements that came to us the earliest in a while for Adelaide Metcalfe. So I'm quite pleased to see the year following.
That's true, yes. So on that note, I'll just make a couple comments on the audit. I have included in council's package some of the standard communications. One is an audit findings letter. That's where I am required to tell you of any significant deficiencies or things that council should be aware of. And I am pleased to report there's no significant deficiencies or anything that I felt needed to come to council's attention. In addition to the audit findings letter, which is addressed to council, I did issue a management letter, so that's issued to Johnny, and it's more recommendations, ideas for improvements going forward. And I know that's something he was looking for and open to. We've discussed that already, so I don't have anything specific to bring to council's attention, but I wanted to let you know that I did issue that letter with some suggestions for future as he grows in his role.
Excellent.
Any other questions for me as the auditor?
No, it doesn't look like it. But we have a motion that is in front of us, and that is that council approve the 2020 audited financial statements as presented. Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Hendricks, second by Councilor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you so much, Jen.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right, so moving on to the next portion of our agenda, it's the correspondence. So our upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. Our next meeting is on Monday, November 15th, and then followed by Monday, December 6th. And then we have the Roma conference for 2022, which is virtual, and that's being held from January 23rd to the 25th. Recommended ratings. The first one is from St. Clair, and it's in regards to their new general manager announcement. The 2022 draft budget report and budget booklet, also from St. Clair. Item number 3 is from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Oh, Councillor McKinnon, going back to the St. Clair stuff.
Yes, through you, Mayor Curtis. That meeting for November the 10th with St. Clair, I'm hoping that all of council can attend. And if you have any questions, that's the time to raise them. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Do we need to RSVP for that, or are we able just to join right in?
I believe if you call into Ashley Fletcher, or if you email Ashley Fletcher at St. Clair, she'll put you in as a Zoom invite, and you'll be able to get in that way. If it's any different, I'll get back to you.
Okay. As I was saying, item number 3 is from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. That's in regards to the enhanced COVID-19 certificate. Item number 4 is from Good Roads Association. Their board of directors call for nominations. Item number 5 is from the Osalo Bayfield Conservation Authority, and it's their board minutes for September 16th, as well as their budget committee minutes from October 14th, and their board agenda for October 21st. And then item number 8 is from the Blue Water Recycling, and it's their board of directors meeting highlights for October 21st. And then the last one there is from Roma, and it's their 2020 annual report. Okay, is there any questions on any of those? Seeing none, can we have a motion to receive and file items CC 1 to 8? Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we're going to jump right into staff reports. And our first one is in regards to the Timmermans Drain 2021, and it's the tender results. And we have our drainage super here, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if council can recall, the Timmermans Drain has gone through the consideration meeting and court of revision with no issues. The Timmermans Drain, the tenders were issued September 9th, and they were notice of that were sent out, and the tenders were closed on October 19th and were read aloud from myself and Jessica Buttry, financial assistant. And the results are as follows. The engineer's estimate is $156,710. And the lowest bid, as you can see here, is $149,278.25. These numbers are before HST. And I would like to direct your attention to my recommendation that is backed up by Sprete & Associates, that they had gone through the numbers as well to ensure that there were no issues. That council accepts the tender from A.G. Hayter in the amount of $149,278 plus HST. And I'm open for questions or inquiries.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Is there any questions or comments for Andrew and his report? Okay, so we have the recommendation in front of us. So we have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Moving to the next report, it's from our clerk, and it's the 2022 municipal elections and key dates and timeline. Mike.
Thank you. Through the mayor to members of council. This is purely an informational report, just to give council some idea of the timelines ahead of them for the next election if they're running, and for the public, just to be transparent with dates. Most of these do come from the AMCTO calendar. One of the purposes originally for this report was some of the discussions around changing the makeup of council. Unfortunately, with the timing, especially consideration of the appeal time, it does put us behind on that, and we're no longer able to get that through in time. I will note that that was not on the AMCTO calendar, and speaking with other municipalities, it is something, the one that I spoke to that did go through a formal process in this regard, they did start a year out. I mean, theirs was a fulsome change where they actually RFP'd out for a study. But yes, you should leave yourself plenty of time if you're looking to change that composition. And that's why we're talking about a minimum of 6 months out. Otherwise, it's just to pass the be received and filed.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
So I understand that you can't establish wards and stuff with a public meeting, but that's also if we wanted to change from having a deputy mayor to councillors, that's also part of that long public meeting process. Okay.
Through the mayor to the deputy mayor. Yeah, that is correct. Any change in the makeup of council composition and wards.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Councilor Brody?
So even just for that, it says December 31st, we're out of time, like if we wanted to. Yeah,
due to the appeal period mostly, because you have to give public notice for the meeting, and then there's 45-day appeal period afterwards. And if you do get appealed, that's the difficult part of that. Not likely an appeal as discussed, but yeah, that does make it pretty tight.
So it's possible if we didn't have an appeal?
I guess we could look into it, but that is very tight.
Well, I just feel, and no offense to the way it's been set up before, I know Deputy Marianne is a great deputy mayor. I just feel I'd like to see it be 4 councillors. Just I have a strong feeling you can lose somebody very, very good in that position. So if there was even a slim glimpse of hope and everybody was for it, I'd like to try that. But I guess it's
through the mayor to members of council, I can look into it, but if 45 days puts you right basically on the dot, notice would have to go out right after. I'll look into it and inform council is what I can do.
Okay. Because yeah, Councilor Brody, the reason, so I did discuss this with Mike and Morgan, and the reason why this report came before us is because I know we've been talking about the idea of going from mayor, deputy mayor, and 3 councillors to mayor and councillor and 4 councillors. And I too was kind of, upset that we missed the mark on it. But I understand what you're saying, Councilor Brody, that, if there wasn't an appeal and if everything went perfectly, I assume that we might be able to make something work. But I guess if we can go back between now and the next council meeting, if we can kind of dig into it and see if, everything aligned perfectly, and if council is really looking forward to making that change, that I would rather try now than wait another 3 years.
I would too.
Morgan, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to council if there were any other major considerations that we should look at, this being the primary one, to essentially turn the deputy mayor position into a councillor seat. Is there anything else that council holds close to itself that we should look at potentially as a secondary option? However, Mike and I will look at our timelines in the next couple of weeks to see if we can get notice of it real quick, but make sure we can define this change in a way that the public understands and is appropriate against legislation we have to work with and all that other fun stuff. The other thing I did want to bring to council, we debated on putting it in this timeline as well, but I know there's been a request from council previously back in 2019 to look at remuneration for the next term of council. So I'd like to bring that forward before May, because that's when the candidates can register and the start of registration, right, Mike? If I remember that council or that calendar well. So we're going to put that in our timeline as well to bring something forward for council as well, because we want to get the next term of council. So just give you a heads up.
Okay. Councilor Brody?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Curtis, to Morgan. Yeah, I was gonna maybe mention that. I just want it to be in line with other municipalities. I know it was brought up shortly after I started. It seemed like it was a rushed scenario. I didn't really trust the numbers that were thrown at us. So I think with a little time, I want it to be fair. I don't want to be, looking to be out of place or anything like that. And I was also going to maybe throw in that, like the fire department remuneration, like, a few things at the same time, gives us more time before next budget. Just to see where other municipalities are at, because I honestly, I don't really know myself.
Yeah, for sure. So I've reached out to the same consultant that created our administrative compensation program, and she's very strong in also completing council remuneration programs. And to bring some alignment between both of those worlds, we could look at the same comparators or municipalities that we used to develop our administrative or staff compensation program. So I think that would be a pretty good alignment, and those numbers would come in. Council's underpaid as far as I'm concerned, so we do need to bring that up. But we'll let the consultant tell us what that should look like. And then, of course, Councillor Brody will look at the firefighters as well. But given timing, we might have to do one and then the other, but we'll get there.
Okay, perfect. So we have the recommendation in front of us, and that's to receive and file. Do you want to leave that as it is, Mike Barnier, and then you'll be reporting back, or do you want to switch that motion around?
To the mayor, you can still receive and file. We can also have that council direct staff to look into the change of council composition and timing.
Okay.
I'll word it better, but if you want to pass direction, that's fine as well.
Okay, so we'll have that first motion there, which is to receive and file this report. Mover and seconder, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. And then the second motion there is to have staff investigate the composition of council. And that's specifically switching from the mayor, deputy mayor, and 3 councillors to mayor and 4 councillors. Okay, mover and seconder for that. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. And just for clarification to everybody on YouTube and watching this later on, we're not making that decision. We're directing staff to look into it to come back. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Mike. And our next 2 reports are from Johnny, and the first one is the budget to actual for September 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, we have in front of us the September 2021 budget to actual report. We are looking to be on track. A couple issues noted in prior months have actually been corrected. One being the outstanding Q4 OMPF. After reaching out to the ministry, explaining our situation, we were able to receive this, even though our FIR is not yet submitted. So we were thankful for that. So that's going to be coming in on time. In addition, the tree program has been reviewed. We just want to confirm that there were some reserve funds still available for that program, which there is. So we've communicated that information to Coulter to review this program on his end to continue on with that when that time makes sense. As far as expenses are still lagging, this is mainly due to some larger public works projects as communicated in the prior months. So yeah, pretty much the recommendation in front of us is to receive the September 2021 budget actual report as presented. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, so we need to have a motion that the budget actual for September 2021 be received for information. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? And that's carried. And then there's second one there, which is the AED reserves transfer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council. Back in 2018, the township received a donation from Marilyn Butchery for the purchase of an automatic external defibrillator, or AED. These funds at the time were transferred to the Mars for Mayor Reserve for this future purchase. As part of the Kerwick Park improvements, it was recommended that we have an AED available to the community. Following the township's procurement policy, this unit was purchased from the Middlesex London Paramedic Services. So by utilizing these donated funds in the MAR for Mayor's Reserve for its intended purpose, the overall levy impact will be nil. So the recommendation in front of us is that the ZOL AED in the amount of $3,444.58 be 100% funded from the MAR for Mayor Reserve. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Okay, so we have the recommendation in front of us, and just for clarification, because Marilyn Butcher would not be happy if I didn't say it, it's Mayor for Mayors, as in Mayor as in Marilyn, and it's for mayors. Anyways, mover and seconder. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody, all those in favor? And that's carried. All right, that's your last report there, Johnny. Thank you. And the next one is the Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, and that's from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you to council, it's been a bit of time since we last visited this conversation, but as council may remember, May 17th, Cara Finn and Dirk Vanderwerf from the county provided a presentation to council on really the benefits of a community improvement plan. And during their presentation, they also mentioned that there were 50% dollars that we could leverage in the event that council wanted to undertake the development of its own community improvement plan. So just going through the report, community improvement plans are used by municipalities in Ontario to facilitate the redevelopment, rehabilitation, or revitalization of selected areas in the community. Through the development of these plans, they identify areas within the municipality in need of physical improvement and can leverage financial incentives to provide businesses with the means to undertake these physical improvements. Really, without a community improvement plan, municipalities are unable to offer financial assistance to the private sector in any way possible. These plans are developed through input from a number of stakeholders, being in the community, local business owners, residents, community organizations, agencies, township administration, council, and really any other stakeholder that wishes to be involved. It is really a great way for the community to come together, set some goals, and to work as a team to improve areas of the municipality as determined through the consultation process. Traditionally, community improvement plans have been used to fund Main Street related initiatives. However, municipalities have become more creative and are applying community improvement areas across the entire geography of the township to include things like agritourism, commercial development, or agriculture in general. If council wishes to proceed with the development of a plan, it would be the recommendation of administration to undertake the project using the leadership and guidance of Paul Hicks, who is very familiar with the area. From Republic Urbanism. They have worked with a number of municipalities in the area, including North Middlesex, Lucan Badolf, and Strathroy Caradoc, and certainly have the expertise, skills, and abilities that we would require to successfully complete the project in Adelaide Metcalfe. Unfortunately, we're up against some funding timelines. So if council wishes to take on the project, we wouldn't have time to complete a request for quotation process through our procurement policy. So really what I'm looking for council this evening is an exemption from our procurement policy, which council is able to do. Lastly, if council chooses to undertake the project, as I mentioned before, the county will fund 50% of the total project cost, leaving us with a total financial impact of about $8,320. Beyond the plan's development, council still has to balance things like fiscal responsibility and other programs and services that it wishes to provide through the budget process. So you still have choices through the budget, whether to fund some of the initiatives, all the initiatives, or none at all, given the circumstances that we're facing through budget. Unfortunately, this is not a project that was contemplated in the 2021 budget. To be honest, I really didn't have a full awareness at that time in 2020 when we were talking about the budget of this program. So now that we have an understanding of what it looks like and what we can do to get there, this report is brought to council. So and speaking with Mr. Treasurer there, Johnny, he is comfortable with the idea of recommending to commit our portion of about $8,300 to the 2022 budget outcome. So I guess I'll leave it there for now for any council discussion or questions. Otherwise, I'd recommend to council that we proceed with the recommendation in the report.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Councilor Brody?
Through you, Mayor Smith, to Morgan, this would probably be a pretty good idea for the 81 corridor, would it not? Like, basically, we've got Kerwood Park, we got to do our next phase for the budget time or before that to get that done. But, that's pretty well going to be a wrap. But this is probably something we really need on 81 corridor, would be my guess.
It would certainly help. Absolutely. I know council's been talking about creating an economic development strategy, which would include or at least look at our Highway 81 commercial corridor. This would be one of the actions towards an economic development strategy for sure. We also have some agritourism businesses in the township that we could absolutely support through signage and raising awareness and helping them with landscaping and facade. And so, yeah, it would absolutely be a benefit to the township.
Any other questions or comments at all? All right, so we have the recommendation in front of us. If we have a mover and seconder. Okay, Councilor Brody, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor? And that's carried. And somehow before 8 o'clock, we're at the end of our staff reports. Is there anything for other business? We just whipped through that agenda. Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I had asked to have the Blue Water meeting report circulated, and as everybody knows, Francis likes to include a whole lot of stuff that maybe you didn't plow through all of the 30 pages of industry information. And generally the stuff that applies to us is at a local level is in the first 5 or 6 pages. One of the things that is happening is that our costs for both recycling and garbage collection are going to go up 2% for recycling and 4.4 because that's the cost of living increase for garbage retrieval. But I think we could probably, our citizens could probably help with the costs of the recycling, especially since, I mean, this is a cooperative. Blue Water is owned by all the townships, and they're having a real problem with contamination in the wheelie bins. They thought they would be drier, but they're getting stored outside. So they're having a lot of problem with wet cardboard and paper getting mixed together, and people are getting lazy about cleaning out things like ketchup bottles. Like, they don't have to be spotless. They don't have to go through the dishwasher, but it would be great. It would save us money in the long run and save garbage if people would maybe think about cleaning their stuff out just a little bit better. And maybe finding a way to keep the water out of their wheelie bins, because they're trucking around all that extra weight when the water stuff gets dumped into the truck. So that's really all I had about that.
Yep. Mike, our clerk.
If it suits council, at North Middlesex, we did push out a campaign communication wise. Quick little reminders of what is recyclable, what's not, pointing them to the BRA website, and that it does increase costs for everybody. I think that's something we could easily communicate through social media and our website.
Perfect. And it's also a good reminder to let everybody know that the garbage will be picked up tomorrow morning. Okay, is there anything else for other business? Okay, not seeing any. So we just have two bylaws for tonight. So the first one is, first motion is that bylaw number 56 of 2021, the Peters drain, received the third and final reading. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. And then the last one there, it's bylaw number 67 of 2021, the confirming for this meeting, received the first, second, and third and final reading. Okay, Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Brody, all those in favor? That's carried. And if there's nothing else, we haven't adjourned a meeting at 7 o'clock. We are in the 7 o'clock hour in a long time. 7:46. Anybody want to move it? Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor Hendricks. All those in favor?